I thought it was time for another song, but that's gonna happen after. Yeah, exactly. This is fun. Okay. All right. Well, oh, it's so good to be here. So good to be with all of you. And to share this third talk in our series, which is on the radical interconnection of beingness. And I think that we really heard some wonderful stuff today about the electrical circuitry that goes on within us and how we are connected there. Last couple of weeks, I talked about becoming equal with everything around us, even inanimate objects, and recognizing that we are sharing a life force, we're sharing molecules, we're sharing atoms. And so this level of interconnection is way beyond our normal awareness. It's way beyond what we normally think of as this is where my body ends and this is where the chair begins. Actually, our chair and our body are sharing molecules the whole time. And we're really a frequency of energy. And some people call it a vibration. So just like in that wonderful song we heard about our island life, I want you to know that your vibration is your location. It is. Because consciousness is really all that there is. It's hard for us to get that because we think we're a solid something separated from others. And then we have unitive experiences, we have emotionally opening experiences, and we begin to feel beyond it, but it's way more than that. Consciousness comes first. Everything that we experience is through the filter of our consciousness. And our consciousness is a state of being. So it's literally our location in the universe. Now, what's going on in the world today? I want to share a little bit about that. I'm going to move this. We know that the Earth is in a process of transformation, that some call it climate change, but it's deeper than that. Humanity is in the process of being called the ascension. The Mayans called it the end of the fifth world. And it's based on the 26,000 year cycle, 26,000 plus year cycle of the precession of the equinoxes, which literally means the entire Milky Way has shifted its position relative to us. And that happens every 26,000 years. The Hindus, the yogis, call it the end of the Kali Yuga. So we're in this period where consciousness is shifting, and we're orienting en masse, hugely, collectively, and individually at a level that's unprecedented in human history for the last 26,000 years. So of course, things are going to shake, rattle, and roll out there in the world. What happened in your own life when you had your transformation experience? Your initial transformation experience. Things fell apart. Indigenous cultures all over the planet have experienced in the last 500 years things falling apart. The old ways dissolving, and that incredible disorientation and feeling disenfranchised and not knowing where to land and what's real and who am I and who are my people and what's going on. And we look out at the world today and it can look like chaos because we see systems dissolving all over the place. Things are just falling apart. And there's a wonderful theory out there called lepta. Lepta. You know, the fact of the matter is, since our vibration is our location, we all are having the opportunity to up-level. and our systems and the planet Earth is up-leveling too. But it's just like the birth experience for the fetus. You know, they're getting squeezed in the most horrible manner and shot out into this vast, open, God knows what, and then slapped on the butt as soon as they arrive. And so, kind of think of it like that sometimes. We're expanding into a much bigger arena in the world, in our own life, in our consciousness, and it can be scary. But I want to tell you that in times of rapid transition like this, even in the midst of the storm, we are not here to fear the storm. That's not what we're about. Now, last week I talked about how we are now. And remember, I was talking about how our brain almost seems to be hardwired for some of this survival stuff, based on our human history of thousands and hundreds of thousands of years of trying to survive and being chased by wild animals and God knows what else. Maybe even dinosaurs, who knows? But that does not have to be where we live anymore. Even though in times like this, our survival fears can surface. Our need to control can surface, which is a sign of our fear. Let's not dwell on that in ourselves. The first step, the other part of this talk is called the art of mindful living. Well, the first step in mindfulness is to become conscious of what the content of my mind is. And meditation is a great way to do that, but so is driving your car. Just notice when you are driving your car, what's the conversation going on in your head? You know, are you rehearsing things that you need to say to somebody? Are you rehearsing old grievances and hurts? Are you planning and scheming for how you're going to maximize those opportunities in front of you? That's all survival brain. Not bad, but it's not where we want to go. That's the past. Note it. It's not to get into shame or say, oh my goodness, I'm so stuck in this old rut. No. We all are stuck in that old rut. And we have been for 26,000 years at least. So here is the growing leading edge for us. It's to note it. It's to become consciously aware. Oh, I got some survival things running. I got my own program running. I got those old inner dialogues going. Note it. Because once we are awake to it, that's the first step in awakening. And once we're awake to it, now we can choose. What do I want to think about? What are the thoughts I want to dwell on? And one of the things I do is that I move to appreciation and beauty. You might do it totally different. It could be gratitude. It could be remembering a happy memory and people you love. For each of us, we have a little different strategy. So for me, I suddenly find myself appreciating the beauty around me and feeling that deep appreciation for all that is in my life. My vibration is immediately tuned up. And so we're not here to fear the storm, we're actually here to transform and to allow our vibration to reach the highest level that it can, the higher frequency. Back in the 1990s, Dr. David Hawkins wrote a book that changed a lot of people's thinking, and it was called Power versus Force. And one of the things he did was calibrate the frequency of human consciousness. And he's got a bunch of graphs. And he wrote another book called The Map of Human Consciousness, and it tells you all these states. This is a great guidebook. Not necessarily to get down into the weeds, into the details here, but just notice he's got 3 grades of consciousness. And he generally puts it in survival paradigm, which is the bottom, and that's shame, guilt, greed, anger, jealousy It's a lot of that and fear. And I think fear in many of us, at least for most of human history, that's kind of been the overriding program driving the bus. It's been fear in one form or another. The next level he calls reason and integrity. And the first stage in the level of reason and integrity, this is you moving your basic frequency up a level, is courage. And I think that's fascinating. Because what do we need to do once we notice that we're in some kind of fear program within us, which is the old way of wanting to avoid certain things and wanting to control everything. That's basically fear. So if you find yourself in avoidance a lot in your life, you will notice that there is stagnant energy in your life. Control and fear create stagnation because we avoid. We avoid what? Risk. And you see how courage is the first step into reason and integrity to raising your vibration? We gotta take a risk. We gotta take a risk to do it differently. To try something new, to think new thoughts. Now, actually, they're ancient thoughts. They've been around for a heck of a long time. But what we're doing is turning the dial. Imagine that you're an old-fashioned analog radio, and you got a dial. And we're down here in the lower frequencies, and we want to dial it up now. So we dial it up to courage. I'm going to take the courage to take a risk, to try something new. And then the next step is neutrality. Stop calling things good or bad. Recognize, and this is something Shakespeare said 500 years ago, nothing is good or bad, but thinking makes it so. That's the truth. Everything's neutral. The Course in Miracles starts you off in the first 10 lessons, trying to drill home this principle that all that we think is good or bad, and we're putting our judgment on everything in the universe. So we bring ourselves back to neutrality. And then he says willingness and acceptance. And I think willingness and acceptance are after we've taken all these risks and we begin to get the reward. Because there is a reward. It's where our new life is. It's where excitement and joy can arrive. We get to have wins. We get to have new adventures. And there's this wonderful rush of life, that life force that flows into us when we're willing to step out and take risks. And so once that happens, we become a little more willing to not quickly judge a situation or an event. We allow a little neutrality. We'll see what happens here. Well, I'm not going to judge you yet. You can start there, so I'm not going to judge you yet. And then we move past that into this openness and willingness, which, by the way, Dr. David Hawkins wrote another book and he called it Surrender. You know, and all spiritual teachers get here eventually. But that's the step. Willingness and acceptance are the gateway into surrender. And that is literally the portal into higher consciousness, is surrender. And why is that? It's because our ego-based thinking is all about surviving. That's what it's there for, and it's done a great job. Thank you. Thank your ego. It stopped you from running into that other car on the way here, or getting out and getting into a fist fight, or whatever. You know, survival is not a bad thing. And learning some instincts and getting those under control with our ego isn't a bad thing. Who is it who balances the checkbook? It's not our Christ consciousness. We need an ego. So let's not demonize it. But let's not be controlled and run by it either. A lot of spiritual teachings ask us to make it our friend, to enlist its help. And we do that through surrendering to the higher power, to our Christ consciousness, to the oneness. And that third paradigm, Dr. David Hawkins calls the spiritual paradigm. And we move into that, there is love, there is joy, there is Christ consciousness, there is oneness. And you begin to feel that radiant sense of all possibility, that radiant sense of oneness. And then we recognize that everything is vibrating. The matrix, as it were, comes alive. Only now we are Neo. We are able to name it and change it and claim it consciously inside Christ consciousness. And I wondered about that. Why is that possible, the Christ consciousness, and not possible from our ego level? It's because our higher elevated self is choosing for the one, for all. Our ego is usually choosing an advantage for ourselves. It's a limited amount of energy. It's where, the step in is where two or more are gathered. We lift up and join in that higher consciousness. And then when we get into that state of oneness and pure joy and the awareness of the truth of our being, we speak our word and it happens. A lot of us are in the process of doing this. This is where we are going as a collective. We are moving in to reason and integrity. We are moving into the spiritual paradigm. Rumi wrote some beautiful poetry about this. And one of them, can't quote it exactly, but he talked about all night long. Now I want to tell you, when he did his spiritual practice, he had a group with him. They did group meditation. And a lot of that group meditation was chanting and then silent meditation, and they did it all night long. You need to remember what that was like. So when you read his poems and he says, don't go back to sleep, he means it literally. As well as, metaphorically. But there's a beautiful poem where he says, all night long, the angels and Jesus himself are crossing the threshold back and forth. That's the state of consciousness we have the opportunity to live in. When we surrender and move into this trustingness of life, knowing that we are connected to everything, we move back and forth between an ecstatic state of union with the one and then being the servant of the one. Being a portal of the one. Being the individualized consciousness that's leading an individualized life. I watched a YouTube, I love to watch physics YouTubes, I can't help myself. And there are some wonderful British physicists that are sharing brilliant, deep truths about life. Not just Rupert Sheldrake, who is actually a biologist, and I'd love to get into some of his stuff because I adore him. How many of you know Rupert Sheldrake and his work? Fabulous stuff. Talking about this resonance of consciousness and how it is primary in the universe and it precedes light. Light is the first body of consciousness, the first form it takes. So when we realize that we are light, slow, way down. And then we speed ourselves back up, lifting into that higher consciousness. Now we can shift the form. So this is our process today, and it means that your vibration is your location in the universe. And there's no need to fear the storm outside. In fact, have you noticed that the same event can happen to you and someone else? You're both in the same experience, and one of you experiences calamity, and the other isn't phased by it at all. may even see opportunity. That's consciousness that does that. And so that's what we're called to do, is to move our frequency up and align with these higher states of oneness, knowing that the storm is passing, but I like to think of it also as surfing. One of the first lessons I had to learn before I could ever get on a board was how to survive a big surf. Because I learned to surf at the Wedge in Newport. Probably pretty stupid, but my parents didn't know better. They didn't have clues. And my surfboard was 12 feet long. This is back in the 60s, okay? Good. You dive under the wave. You dive under. Now, of course, it depends on the topography of the shore line that you're dealing with. But at Newport, it was flat, pretty flat. I mean, there was a slope, but it wasn't that bad, so you could dive under the wave. And that's how I see us. With our higher consciousness, we dive under the storm. We allow things to fall. We let them, as Jesus says, let them take care of themselves. I'm not quoting him exactly, but you know what I'm talking about. There's a quote in the Bible where he said, let your mother and your father and everybody else take care of themselves, because they will. And there's something that happens at these higher levels. It's like being in the Tao. You realize that the 10,000 things, which is what Lao Tse called the creation, the matrix, these 10,000 things are all on their own trajectory. They're working on their own physical laws. They will take care of themselves. You don't need to concern yourself. Our concern is, where's my consciousness? What am I dialed into? Where am I tuning my body, my mind, my spirit? How am I recognizing my true mission in life? Because these are ripples. You see, we're not disconnected. We are one. So the greatest thing we can give back to the world is to lift ourselves up into the higher frequency. We become an oasis in the storm. Other people will find us. And they will be attracted in to your calm, your peace, your strength, your joy, your laughter, your celebration of life. And they will find refuge from the storm. That is a possibility for us because we are connected. So that's what we're here to do. And I want to finish with reading a beautiful little thing that Mary Oliver wrote. How many of you are great Mary Oliver fans like me? Yes. She's a fabulous poet, and I just adore her. How many of you know the poem The Journey? Okay. This human life as being a guest house. Maybe you know it's the guest house, okay. That's Mary Oliver. Well, in the last years of her life, and she lived to be in her 90s, everybody was concerned about climate change and everything going wrong and blah, blah, blah. And here's what she had to say. And I love it because it reveals her higher state of consciousness. I would say there exists 1,000 unbreakable links between each of us and everything else. And that our dignity, our changes are one. The farthest star and the mud at my feet are a family. And there is no decency or sense in honoring just one thing or a few things and shutting out the others. The pine tree, the leopard, the Platte River, and ourselves. We are all at risk together. Or we are on our way to a sustainable world together because we are each other's destiny. Thank you.
good.